Hello and welcome to another edition of Time Drive with Pete Chambers in the Coventry Music Museum in the Ghost Town car. How you doing out there? Roll those titles. As you know, with Time Drive, each episode we pick a year, and we're not going back so far this time in this super duper car. We're only going back as far as 2015 because our guest, yes, there's always a connection, our guest started his special project in that year. Now, I've had a few people say to me, Ghost Town car. Now, I know you're not all Specials two-tone fans out there. What's the significance of the Ghost Town car? Well, it's all about the band, the Specials, of course. Now, in this very car, and it is the very car, they actually recorded a video to go with the song that was number one in 1981 called Ghost Town. And this is a car. Now, in the museum, we got a lot of people coming in, sitting in this and having the photographs taken while they watch behind the camera. Don't look around, you can't see it. But behind you, there's a nice big screen which tells the story of the two-tone history and everything else that goes on. So I hope that's explained to those people that didn't know what a Ghost Town car is. Now you know, but for us, it's our stage, and this is where we sit, and this is when we do our show. And that special guest, which I intimated on, is Steve Everitt, and he's the man from Fargo that runs the great museum dedicated to Phil Silvers. So a little different from the music side of things. It's not always going to be music. We're going to contact and talk to the movers and shakers in the city. Anyway, let's get on with it. So 2015, well, a few things happened in Coventry. A major thing was the Empire. I love the Empire. Phil Rooney, hi mate, great guy and a great venue. Loads and loads of bands have played there, doing great stuff in the city. Well, that opened in 2015. Slight connection there, or a big connection with the Empire, because the Enemy released, well, what was their last album, It's Automatic, also in 2015. And the title track of the same name, It's Automatic, I thought was an absolute classic. And it never got the chart play it deserved. Also in 2015, Christine Sugary Staples, Neville's wife, she released her first recording. This is original Rude Girl sound. It featured Roddy on it as well, Roddy Radiation, of course, who's also been a guest here. We're very lucky in the Coventry Music Museum, which is here, of course. We get some great stars. And one particular reggae star that came in was Dandy Livingstone. Now, I grew up listening to his music, and to think I actually got to meet him in my own museum is incredible. And that's down to Sugary Staple, as we talked about, and we want to thank her and Neville, of course, for bringing some of these reggae stars into the building. And this guy responsible for Susan, Beware of the Devil, remember that one? And of course the original A Message to You, Rudy, which of course the Specials went on and had great hits with. Well, he wrote it and he did it originally. So let's look at some of the random key events of 2015 in Coventry. Well, the Rocket Pub was demolished in this year. Very, very sad. I spent a lot of time in that pub, and of course back in the day it was pretty much the canteen for Horizon Studios, which was across the way there on the other side of the road. Lots of bands recorded in there, famously the Specials, of course, and the Selector, and bands like Bad Manners with Roger Lomas, and it was just a wonderful place. But sadly it died the death, and that was the end of it. All these pubs are being closed down, and there was one. Talking about Bad Manners, well, they played in the Copper Rooms up in the University of Warwick, of course, in this year. The Empire, as I mentioned earlier on, opened in Gosford Street. I really love that venue. Of course, it was designed by a rock star, Mr. Clark, Tom Clark, of course, from The Enemy. The fact that it's all laid out very proper for the musician's point of view is not a mistake. It's not a bit of chance. It's all down to him. So thank you for that. Great venue. Right, in the UK, there was a general election this year with David Cameron winning for the Conservative Party. Ooh, wake me up, please. Anyway, Queen Elizabeth II, having been on the throne for 63 years and 217 days, became the longest reigning British monarch in history. Hurrah! And the longest serving head of state of any nation in modern history, surpassing Queen Victoria, who had reigned for 63 years and 216 days upon her death. Hurricane force winds caused travel disruption and leave tens of thousands of homes without power across Scotland. Internationally in 2015, debris found on Reunion Island It's confirmed to be that of the Malaysian airline Flight 370, missing since March 2014. Expo 2015 is held in Milan, Italy. Ireland votes to legalise same-sex marriage, becoming the first country to legalise same-sex marriage by popular vote. So lots going on in this year. And of course, Sepp Blatter, FIFA president, announced his intention to resign amidst an FBI-led corruption investigation. Some of the number ones of 2015 were Ellie Goulding and Love Me Like You Do, Sam Smith featuring John Legend, Lay Me Down, Jess Glynn, Hold My Hand, One Direction, Drag Me Down, Justin Bieber, What Do You Mean, Lewis Shulman Greenwich NHS Choir, A Bridge Over Troubled Waters. So welcome our very special guest today, Steve Everitt. Hiya Steve, welcome aboard.
Good afternoon Pete, how you doing?
First time in the car.
First time in the car, and been a while since I've been into the museum, so
it's good to see you.
That lists for me.
Well, you're here now and that's great. So a few questions today, and obviously we normally have musicians in here, but we thought it's nice to have the movers and shakers in the city, and of course you're a bit of a mover and shaker yourself here.
I would hope so, yes. Certainly, well, like yourself, we're quite unique in what we do in raising the profile for Coventry City as well. So, mover and shaker. I like that.
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice term, and let's hope we're making a difference. But we'll see. So, music first. What was the first sounds you were listening in when you were growing up? What was the music your parents were playing, and what was on the radio?
My parents were playing a lot of rock and roll, Elvis. My mum was a big Elvis fan, real big Elvis fan. My mum sort of ruled the roost in the house with music. I mean, it was a long time ago as well, so it's hard to remember sometimes. My musical tastes were always a slightly off base. I mean, I can actually embarrassingly remember my first vinyl record that I bought, I think was a Wombles record, believe it or not. But I mean, at school everybody was into Queen at the time and stuff, and they never grabbed me at all, So I was always looking at, obviously 79, the two-tone era exploded. So I was, one of the young lads that got into two-tone right from the start. So.
Well, we're coming to that in a minute, but before we get there, so musical favourites, you've kind of like touched upon the Wombles, which I'm not suggesting is a musical favourite, But there is, by the way, I don't know if you know, but Mike Batt used to live in Coventry.
Yes,
so there is a Coventry connection there, which is quite interesting. Who knew? But there we are. But anyway, tell us about your television in Britain as you were growing up. Now, obviously, that's had a big impact on you.
A huge impact, because when I was growing up, like in the 70s, we had 4 television channels. Of course, and wasn't television much better with just 4 television channels?
Yeah, I think you're right in many ways.
The quality was there, and there was creativity with the scheduling and the programs that they would put out. I mean, I grew up with a lot of the shows that are now coming back on Talking Pictures, the TV channel. They're showing a lot of the shows that I grew up with. I mean, they're going to show Catweasel soon.
Catweasel,
Jeffrey Belden, so and things like. I grew up with Doctor Who, a lot of the BBC-based shows. So I grew up with Doctor Who, and the Doctor for me was, and might be for you as well, would have been John Pertwee, then Tom Baker. They were they're my mainstay Doctors, really. And I grew up watching a lot of the BBC used to do on a Saturday night a horror double bill. A classic Universal horror film and a Hammer horror film, and I just loved watching that. And then BBC would show things like they reran the original Twilight Zone, and the Outer Limits. I was
just going to mention that. Did you any of the Americans? And of course, the Outer Limits.
Yes.
Brilliant stuff.
And then obviously 1981 came along, and I watched my first ever episode of the Phil Silvers Show,
which we're going to come to, of course. Big Starly.
So as you can guess, it was probably a lot of older TV. I was watching, even back in the early 80s, it was TV before the 80s that I was watching. So I watch a lot of modern TV now, but I always hark back to what I class as the quality television when a lot of creative people were working.
So around that time, sort of, we're talking sort of 79, 80, there's a bit of an epiphany for you because you got into not only two-tone, but Phil Silvers around the same time. So big things in your life.
Yes. I mean, the Specials and the Selector and all of those groups, they I think had a profound effect on a lot of people that were certainly Coventry born and bred. You know, they were smash sensation, you know, and people really hooked into what they were saying in their lyrics and the music, and it was an exciting time because it was also you had the punk scene as well. So I was sort of, you know, into that type of, you know, the Sex Pistols and that sort of stuff. There was a lot of creativity, I think, at that time. So yes, it was
a lot of energy going on at the time. And so, do you remember actually seeing Phil Silvers for the first time on television?
Vividly.
Yeah.
I'm 54 now, so my memory's not, you know, age creeps up on you and your memory's not as good. But I do remember I was channel hopping on the 4 channels, and the family were in bed. My 2 brothers and my mum and dad were in bed. And I clicked onto BBC One, and I think it was about a third of the way into one of the first season episodes called The Empty Store. And this is what I find when people come into my museum, is that they'll watch it and they'll be transfixed because it's 23 minutes of pure entertainment. And I was just hooked. Next morning at breakfast, I was saying, you know, what's, you know, quizzing my dad, what's Phil Silvers doing now? Because at this time he was recovering from a stroke and he was living quietly in semi-retirement in Los Angeles. And it just got to that stage. I didn't have a VHS video recorder at the time. So I was, you know, everyone had gone to bed. It was the last program on at night. So I was sitting there with my cassette recorder and recording the soundtrack, and I've still got them. You know, I've recorded. If someone come down to get a glass of water, it's like I'm recording Bilko, you know, and that's how it started. And then my mum and dad, they took me to Radio Rentals, you know, the name from the past. We rented our first VHS video recorder, and that's when I started taping all of the shows.
That's one with the wired lead as well.
That's right. Yeah.
But, oh, fantastic. So we're going to ask you as well about your favourite songs, and this is one of the things we do on Time Drive. So first of all, what's your favourite single and why?
My first favourite single, it's from a band that hailed from Athens, Georgia, same town as REM. And they're a band that I've followed for 30 years. I saw them live 30 years ago at the Town and Country Club in London, and it's Rock Lobster by the B-52.
We're back with Steve, of course, and we're talking about the man himself, Phil Silvers.
Mr. Phil Silvers, yes.
Yeah, and you actually were, well, I suppose in those days it was writing letters, was it, backwards and forwards?
Yeah, we started the Appreciation Society in 1984, and we'd contacted Phil's eldest daughter Tracy to basically get the family's blessing. And Phil was an incurable Anglophile, so he was, shall we say, over the moon that his fan club would be UK based. So yeah, we launched the society in '84, and it just grown from there, and you know, up to present day, we've now got a museum which I would never have dreamt of, you know, all those 35 years ago. But Phil was very appreciative of his British fans, so it's quite apt that the only tribute to Phil Silvers is in Coventry and is in the UK rather than America, where he tends to be a forgotten man.
You see, you tell me that, and I always find that amazing, that because for us in Britain, you know, most people of a certain age know Phil Silvers and know the Bilko show, and it was, you know, it just seems really weird that America's kind of forgotten him. I mean, is that really true? I mean,
there's small pockets of fans over there. There's certain people working in television that still remember him. So you've got like the writers of Frasier, Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, right up to Vince Gilligan, Breaking Bad. You know, one of the characters in Breaking Bad is modelled on Phil Silvers' Bilko character. So there are people, he's not completely forgotten over there,
no.
But his show has never had the exposure that it's had in the UK, where in the UK it was on the BBC for 47 years repeats, which is some sort of Guinness Book of Record, must be. In the States it had its first run in 1955, then after it finished in 59 went into syndication and then ran up until about the late 60s. And then Phil touched on it. He said that when the Vietnam War started, a lot of military shows fell out of fashion with the American viewing public, and I don't think that's ever really recovered, and it's never been elevated to his counterparts like Lucille Ball or Jackie Gleason. You know, they've had Blu-ray releases in the States, you know, and there's still a lot of money being made out of those shows, whereas Bilko, although it's weathered better than those two previous shows, it doesn't get the attention from CBS or America really, and I can't put my finger on why. You know, because he was a massive Broadway star. You know, he started out as a boy singer. I can't understand why they're not dialing into how fresh and funny the show is. And it celebrated its 64th year last September.
So, is there any material that's never been released?
Very little. Very little.
Do you ever come across anything?
There were 144 episodes. We have 143 and a half. There was an hour-long Bilko special made. It was a live special. It was made halfway through the 4th season, and it co-starred Saul Chaplin and Diana Dawes. And we actually purchased many years ago the first half hour on 16mm, because they were filmed on 35mm, but then went out to TV stations in 16mm format. So we've got the first half hour, which sadly doesn't contain the gorgeous Diana Dawes. So we're still looking for the final half hour. That's the only piece of the Bilko jigsaw puzzle that's missing at the moment.
As far as you know.
As far as I know.
But I bet you'd love it.
But like yourself, you always stumble on new stuff, and
Yeah.
people bring stuff to you, and you uncover things, and you know, thanks to the joys of the internet, you just find, you know, how would we have got hold of the original animation cells from the opening credits of the show? You know, and Phil Jupitus came down and he was shaking with delight at holding one of those animation cells, because they're the holy grail.
Iconic, absolutely. I mean, we all watched them, and I mean,
this is
there
it.
we
This
are,
is one of the
t-shirt.
yes, it's one of the t-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely, and amazing stuff. And it is, when you see something like that, it is incredible, and really takes you back, because nostalgia, which of course is what we're doing here in the car, is what it's all about. But we've picked on the year here. We're 2015 because that's when a certain enterprise that you're behind opened.
Yes.
So tell us about that, and tell us the official name, because I know you get really annoyed when people call it the Bilko Museum, a bit like here, you know, when they call it the Two-Tone Museum.
I've mellowed out a bit now, so people say the Bilko Museum, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine, that's all right, you know, but it's actually the Phil Silvers Museum. But yeah, 2015, I was at a hiatus in my life, and Fargo Village was born. And I went down for the opening, and I thought, I like this, and I want to work for myself. I didn't want to go and work for somebody else, so had some savings. So I set up a little shop, what we call it, a pop culture shop now. So it was horror and sci-fi and Star Wars and all this sort of stuff. And I set up in a little shipping container, and I was there for about 6 months. And I wanted to move to a bigger unit, but Fargo said, but we're funded by Europe, so you have to be creative. So I mentioned, well, we've always wanted to set up a Phil Silvers museum, and they were like, that's interesting. Yeah, let's try that. So yes, prior to our launch on 1st of November 2015, I went over and spent some time with Phil's eldest daughter, and we chose some pieces from their collection of artifacts that they've got. And we launched on the 30th anniversary of his passing. So he passed away on the 1st of November 1985. So yeah, we launched, and we were very small, and we're still small, but we're compact and bijou, and we get I'm happy to say we got lots of very happy visitors, and that's what it's all about, as you well know. You know, your TripAdvisor reviews are just, you know,
and yours as well. I will say, if you haven't been, really, you need to go. It's amazing what Steve's got down there, and the whole of Fargo is worth checking out. But really, what this guy's done is amazing. And if you are a fan, then where have you been? You really need to go down there and see the actual
and
stuff.
You don't actually have to be a fan, because you have the die-hard Bilko Phil Silvers fans, You have the casual fans that grew up watching the show either on the BBC or through the Top Cat reruns as well. And then you have what I like are the accidental visitors that they come to Fargo because they want to see what Fargo's like, but then they stumble across this little corner, this little hidden gem of Fargo, and they're like, and it touches on so many people's senses of nostalgia and growing up with families and mums and dads and watching it all together. Yeah, when television, not everybody had a television set. So you'd go round to your relative's house and you'd sit down as a family and watch something on TV, and watch Bilko on TV. And it creates that sort of, I had so many people say, I wish my dad was still alive. He would have loved this little tribute, So we're over the moon with the way it's going, and we plan to expand next year.
Wow. That would be good. That would be. I mean, I'll obviously watch your journey, and we're similar travellers here, and it's just amazing to go there and see what you've done. But am I right in thinking that Phil's family has actually been to the museum?
Yes, Tracy, Iron, and their daughter Meryl. They visited. Well, actually, they visited Fargo twice. They visited when we were in the little shipping container, and they bought one of Phil Silver's wristwatch for us. That's in the museum, obviously. And then it came 2016 when we were that really, really small. We've grown a little bit since then. But no, they were just overjoyed, and his 5 daughters are just so grateful and appreciative that that their dad is being remembered by Britain, and because it's not being reciprocated over in the States. As we touched on earlier, it's
incredible. So what about? Because I know you can be quite scathing on some of the more recent stuff on the TV, but what's the sort of comedy, and it doesn't have to be comedy, what kind of stuff that floats your boat nowadays that's on TV?
I am watching a lot more modern stuff with the wife, with Paula. So, I mean, I touched on it earlier, Breaking Bad is an excellent show, excellent series. Bit of a slow burner, but very well written, very well performed. What else have we been watching? BBC, the Jodie assassin show. What was that? Killing Eve.
Oh right, okay.
Excellent,
I haven't seen
excellent,
it. No.
Yeah. I mean, there is. Don't get me wrong. I love my old stuff, but there is some remarkably good stuff out there, and it tends to be American. I mean, the BBC have just redone War of the Worlds, which we're 3-parter, which is is very, very good. So there is good stuff out there, and I like a bit of everything. If you're talking about comedy, League of Gentlemen. Well, there were 3 Christmas specials recently.
Yeah.
Still Game. I don't know if you watch Still Game.
Yeah, with the Scottish guys.
Yeah,
that's quite.
I mean, that is. I see some slight comparisons with the Bilko show because it's an ensemble cast and the characters are all very well formed. It's very well written. And you identify with all the characters. And when you watch Bilko, even with all the platoon members, each one, and what they, they're like a little. They're like a little family of
They've
people.
all got the backstory.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, talking about all the other stuff that you like, of course, Laurel and Hardy.
Oh gosh.
And you mentioned that the music box steps in 2015.
My very first memory of film is my dad introducing me to Laurel and Hardy, and we sat down and watched it at home when it used to be on the BBC all the time. And it was, it's one where they're street musicians and they're sitting in the midst of winter and it's snowing heavy, and they're singing in the good old summertime outside a deaf and dumb institute. And I just remember it so vividly. And Laurel and Hardy were like, again, they were like 2 friends, because these 2 guys couldn't survive without each other. And it was, I like Chaplin, I like Keaton, I like Lloyd, all those other comedians, but Stan and Ollie had something really, really special because they were just a great team on screen and off screen. They were friends off screen as well. So they made a massive impression on me. And I watched the recent biopic with Steve Coogan. And
what did you think?
And I watched it 5 times at the cinema, and I don't go to the cinema to really watch a film.
Right, okay.
It was a small budget, 10 million film, £10 million film, and they took some liberties with the timeline, but the essence of the film and the love that these 2 guys had for each other. And again, I said to people, you can go. You don't have to have even seen a Laurel and Hardy film to go and watch this film, because it's about two people, the love of two people, and I just thought it was beautifully performed, really well directed, and it's my film of the year.
Well, I loved it, but apparently Paul Merson, Paul Merton? Sorry, he slated it. So, so there wasn't that sort of negative thing going on between them. He didn't like to see that. So I think
Paul was being nice to me then, because he came and visited us on what would have been Phil's birthday, May the 11th. So he brought his improv crowd into the museum.
Oh, right.
And I did touch on the subject of the Stan and Ollie film, and he said he hadn't seen it then. So whether he hadn't seen it or he was just being nice.
Well, the other day I read his review and he slated it because of that, you know, the sort of the negative stuff that was going on towards the end.
Yeah, but they brought it back to, you know, it was all sorted out at the end. Yeah. It was just little things just to keep the film moving and get bums on seats, basically.
Absolutely. So. Anyway, I've moved on a little bit. We need to go back a little bit to your favourite album and why. Are we going to play a track from it?
Total opposite to two-tone, or you know, the what people call the frivolous B-52s. But if you listen to all their back catalogue, there's still quite a bit of good stuff. This is harking back to the BBC, Top of the Pops. I saw, it was bizarre. Which is a band that, when you say it to people, they're not, what? Who's that? No. Matt Johnson and
Typo,
and he did this album in 1986 called Infected.
Of course,
and the single, the first single off the album was Heartland, and it was a single that got banned by the BBC for using a naughty word. I mean, today it's nothing, but it got banned, but it obviously helped with the record sales, as they often do. And it's a track called Heartland.
And we're back in the room. Oh yeah. So, talking to Steve, and we're talking about Fargo right now. What's a typical, if there is a typical Fargo day? Because there's a lot of stuff happens down there. So tell us about it. Your typical day at Fargo.
I don't really have a typical day. You know, I'm there 6 days a week. Every day is completely different. I've always got stuff to do. People think I'm sitting in the Emporium doing nothing. I do a lot on social media, as you well know. The weekends, Fargo really comes alive, so there's always events going on, and we've got a chocolate festival coming up and a vegan festival, and we have record fairs.
Of course, lots going on.
Obviously, I've got Alan next door to me now, just dropped in records. So.
Oh yeah, brilliant record shop. Nice one, Alan. Go and visit.
Yeah. So yeah, there's not really a typical day, but weekends it comes alive, and I just like welcoming all the new visitors that come into the museum. Had a lot of families in this weekend, which was nice, and it's nice. And you know, I get them to sign the guest book, and they can have a free Bilko badge, which is a little token of my appreciation, and we get a photo of them. And it's nice to get a family photo, and you know, the youngsters they look a bit bewildered. You know, who's this Phil Silver's guy? You know, and then you see Top Cat, you know, the Top Cat display I've got in there, and like, oh, yeah, well, I know Top Cat. Yeah. So it's Fargo is obviously, as you know, it's 5 years old now. It's totally unique.
5 years, wow.
5 years.
Where did that go?
Yeah, like that. But it's there's always something happening there. There's always something different going on.
So, final question, and you kind of touched upon it earlier on. So, what's next for you?
Well, we're working like you, I think, with City of Culture. We're all excited about 2021, which is what now, 400 days away.
Something like that. 400, oh my God!
So, yeah, I've got a meeting with City of Culture. I've been speaking to a guy who didn't know the museum was there, but when he did, was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So we would like to stay in Fargo, but expand. You know, the unit at the moment is 2/3 the Emporium, 1/3 the museum. So we're going to go 50-50 with it. So
no, we talked about that.
So it's something I'm giving a lot of deliberation and thinking about. But it'll be early next year. We may need to launch some sort of funding option, but it'll be doable, like you know.
Yeah, you'll get there.
If we want to do it, we'll do it, won't we? We'll get there. So yeah.
Brilliant, Steve.
Lovely.
It's been a pleasure.
Always. Pete.
Do go and visit.
Thank you.